feed at the website. It's the Joe Pag Show. Glad to have you here. Really glad to have this young lady on. Her name is Hannah Spurr. She's a student at Texas A&M University, also a correspondent for campusreform.org. Hannah, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. I appreciate you asking. Thanks for coming by. I like to start with young reporters from Campus Reform, who, by the way, you guys do a great job in uncovering real journalism, and the mainstream media has forgotten how to do that. You guys haven't, so thank you for that. But I always like to start out with what's going on campus. I'm guessing that social distancing is happening. In Texas, we're not as locked down as everywhere else. Are you doing any study on campus? Are you doing it all remotely? How are you doing it?
Yeah, so this is actually my last semester, so I am studying as much as I can on campus because it is my last semester. But like you said, Texas is not doing as much lockdown as some other states are, but A&M is definitely cracking down. We have had a lot of emails about everybody needs to go get tested. We've had randomized testing, and now it's up to the point where they want the whole campus to get tested because we've had such a rise in cases after Halloween. So it's kind of weird. Like, there's the kind of argument where everybody's like, wear your mask. And then there's people like, why are you wearing a mask? So
right.
It's an interesting atmosphere.
Well, it's hard to figure out. I haven't been in college for a long time, but I know I like hanging out with my friends. I like going to class to see people. We like studying together. Are you doing the normal stuff, or are you doing less of that?
Kind of half and half. Things are starting to go back in person, but then our cases rose, so they started to take things away from us.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. I don't go out a ton. I have an autoimmune disorder, so I have to be a little bit careful, but I do still hang around my close friends and go out to eat and things like that.
Good. It is Hannah Spurr. We appreciate you coming on. Let's talk about the election. On campus, is everybody going, hey, it's President-elect Biden, just accept it? Or are people open in your circle to going, well, wait a second, we're not really sure yet?
Yeah, I definitely think A&M is split down the middle. I've heard both perspectives. I've heard a lot of people, Biden's your president. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I've heard a lot of people like, no, they're still counting votes. Like, it's still Trump. Like, Trump won and they're in denial. So like, you've got like the polar opposites.
Right.
But I think like the general consensus is that Biden's the president here.
But he's not. I'm just here to tell you he's not.
Yeah.
And we've got Rudy Giuliani and the Trump legal team on all the time, and they say, oh no, we've got the proof. So we'll see what happens. What I feel good about is that there is no president-elect right now. We still don't know who the winner was because nobody's been certified the winner. So there's still a chance. We'll see what happens. All right, from campusreform.org, it is Hannah Spurr. We appreciate you coming on. All right, student senator impeached after a year-old pro-Trump conservative tweet resurfaces. Really? Fill me in on this.
Yeah, so I found the story really interesting as I've been a student senator here at Texas A&M for 2 years. And basically what happened was this happened at Loyola Marymount University in California. A student senator had tweeted, and I quote, the same people advocating for rights, equality, and better conditions for legal aliens are the same ones censoring freedom of speech, defaming and initiating hostility for those Americans with divergent views. Sad. And apparently because of this and another tweet she had on 4th of July when she said, happy birthday, America, hashtag MAGA, hashtag Trump 2020, hashtag Trump train, hashtag America. Apparently, according to the Associated Students of Loyola Marymount University, she was in violation of Article 8, which said that conduct that severely damages the integrity or authority of ASLMU or the office held by the individual in question. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
How is that harmful? Because I'm guessing people back in the day were saying yes we can and si se puede and hope and change for President Obama. So if you're in student government at Loyola, you can't support the sitting president?
I guess not. I found it really interesting that she also was elected to be the senator for the diversity and inclusion portion of their Associated Students. And I think they often forget that the word inclusion means everybody and all ideas. I know that's an issue that we've had here on campus. It's inclusive if it aligns with your views, but if it doesn't align with your views, then it doesn't fall under the branch of inclusion and diversity.
Right. Including everybody except for Trump supporters, right?
Right. Yeah. No, as long as you're not a Trump supporter, you get to be included. But other than that, like, no.
Crazy to me.
So I definitely got that.
So this person was impeached, and were they removed as well or not?
Yeah, so it was a vote of 18 out of 21 voted to kick her out, and so she has been removed, which is insane.
It is insane. It is Hannah Spurr from campusreform.org. Go to that website every day like I do. UMass professor, we don't say white male composers' full names because of inequity. Huh? Help me out here.
Yeah, so I found that very interesting. I come from a background in classical music, and he was talking about the fact that using monomers such as Bach and Beethoven and Mozart causes inequity to women composers or composers of color, when in
Why?
reality, I think it stems from the fact that Mozart and Bach and Beethoven have had centuries of influence, whereas the other names that he cites in his piece are Alma Mahler and Florence Prince and Henry Burleigh, which, as a classically trained individual, I've never heard these composers' names before. So obviously, I need a last name. But
Well,
when you talk
well,
about
hold on, but they'll say that you don't know the composers because of inequity. You don't know the composers' names, and you've never heard of them because you weren't taught them because white privilege. That's going to be the answer. You realize that, right? How about if I bring up like Giuseppe Verdi, really Joe Green in English? Giuseppe Verdi, I know his first and last name. Does that mean that somehow he's being put down because I know both names? I'm confused. So if I say Madonna, that's enough, isn't it? It's not Madonna Ciccone. It's Madonna. So is it now unequal to white men because a white woman is only using one name? Do they really think this makes sense? I guess, Hannah, that's the question I have.
Yeah, I had the same question thinking about like Sia and Mabel. Like in today's culture, we have a lot of women that go by a monomer, they go by one name. And so
Right.
is it really a question of inequity, or is it a question of you don't need the last name, that you just know them?
It's the question of the Mozart was so good you didn't need his whole name. It's the question of Elvis was so good you could drop Presley because we kind of knew. Yeah, I mean that's so dumb. So in other words, they're looking through all of history now for centuries. Who only used one name, and I'll bet they were a white male. This somehow was racism or misogynism. That's what I'm supposed to believe.
Yeah, that's what this professor would want you to believe. Yes.
And the professor gets away with it. I mean, UMass, that means somebody who's getting taxpayer dollars, right? University of Massachusetts.
Correct. Yeah, he wrote this in an op-ed late. And something I kind of found interesting too, like I said, I'm classically trained. I couldn't even tell you Mozart's first name. Like, so I don't really know.
It's Wolfgang.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, it's Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. But you're right. I mean, it's a great point that you're not as old as I am. There was an actual movie out called Amadeus that explained Mozart's life, and I'm also classically trained. So having said that, of course you didn't know. Why would you know? Mozart is enough. Shakespeare is enough. Why do we have to add more names to make it feel more equal for women? Look, you're a woman. If I only said call me Joe, am I somehow denigrating you? How does it make sense?
It doesn't make sense. That's the whole point. I think it's not degrading to me as a woman. I go by my first name. I don't need somebody to call me by my first and last name every time they refer to me.
That'd
And
be
so,
kind of weird, wouldn't it?
yeah, I'd be like, please stop.
Hi, Hannah Spurr. Good to see you, Hannah Spurr. Welcome to the show, Hannah Spurr. Hannah Spurr, I'd like you to meet Hannah Spurr. No, that'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? So at the end of the day, this is somebody starting trouble for no reason.
Yes, exactly.
All right, it is Hannah Spurr. I'm going to say first and last name here, and she's from campusreform.org. Zoom cancels the second university event featuring a terrorist hijacker. I guess my first question has to be, as somebody who's got a brain, why did we have the first one with a terrorist hijacker?
Yeah, so when I read this headline, it is probably the craziest headline I've seen all of 2020, and that says something because it's 2020. But what happened was the American Association of United Professors chapter at New York University held a second virtual event with a terrorist hijacker, and Zoom actually shut it down. So then they said, well, we still want to have our event, so we're going to go to YouTube. And they went to YouTube, and YouTube said, we're shutting it down. And then they tried to go to Facebook, and even Facebook, the most liberal company that you're going to see
Right.
in the United States, said, this violates our terms of service. We're not doing this here. So this is on some next level of crazy that I have just never heard of before.
So they did all they could to still have this broadcast, and when they couldn't do it, they scheduled a second one, but then Zoom ended up canceling the second one. I guess I'm confused. What were we going to glean from a terrorist hijacker other than I was a terrorist hijacker? I mean, what else do you learn from this person?
That was my question as well. It was an event for her to talk about. It was like a call to action event, and it was called "We Will Not Be Silenced: Against the Criminalization and Censorship of Campus Political Speech." So don't really know what she would bring to the table there. Obviously, they had some idea in their brain. I would love to
Right.
jump inside and see what that was, but
No, that'd be a scary place inside that brain. So, but if like Ben Shapiro or somebody wants to go and speak on campus, they don't have the same freedoms that people are fighting for this person who's a terrorist hijacker.
no, not at all. And it's
And
it's
that's
insane.
okay.
Yeah, of course, of
Wow.
course.
Listen, are we ever going to get back to campuses? Last question. I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate talking to you. Are we ever going to get back to a place to where you go to college, you go to a university, and you actually just get education? Maybe people just teach you stuff. And if we are going to talk about the First Amendment, we have to remind people that everybody enjoys the same freedoms and liberties afforded by the First Amendment. And we're not going to shut down free speech if we just disagree with it. And again, you want to have the terrorist hijacker, you should put somebody who's very conservative or who loves America or says, here's why terrorism and hijacking is bad. But you don't want to do that. You just want to say, hey, free speech, you should be able to speak. Free speech doesn't apply to Joe Pags. Are we ever going to get to that point, do you think?
I came to A&M because growing up, I had heard it was the second most conservative school in the nation, and I would argue that I don't think we're going to get to that point because the amount of liberal bias I have had in my throat here as a political science student is insane. And if you can't get that in College Station, Texas, I don't know if the world's going to change,
I hear
which
you.
is scary.
Well, we're on in College Station. We hear from great people there all the time, but there's a lot of frustration there, too. It's Hannah Spurr. Say her first and last name every time, unless you're a racist. So make sure you do that. She's from campusreform.org. I appreciate you coming on. You do not have a Twitter?
I don't. I actually decided to not do Twitter, and I
Okay.
only have Parler. So
Hey, do you follow me on the Parler? Joe Pags over on Parler. We're getting a pretty good following over there.
I will in a few seconds.
Okay, and I will look for you over there as well. Hannah, I appreciate you coming on. Let's do it again, okay?
Thank you.
All right, back after this with the Joe Pags Show. Stay right here.